Have you ever heard of Walter Freeman? If so, what comes to mind when you think of his name? Some may think of a twisted and demented man, nothing short of a psychopath. But as in his reign as a neurologist, some of his patients and his patients' family members thought that he was responsible for a miracle cure for the troubled and mentally insane. I first gained interest in Walter after touring the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum located in Weston, West Virginia. The asylum was operational from 1864 to 1994. Here, along with many other asylums, hospitals, and even hotel rooms, Walter performed his controversial treatments. Can you imagine a doctor today performing a surgery in a hotel room, let alone one that involves your brain? It was said by many witnesses that if you say Walter Freeman's name in the Trans-Allegheny Asylum, that you can still hear the screams of terror and agony from the spirits that still roam the asylum. Today, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Freeman, briefly go over his recreation of the lobotomy, and let you draw your own conclusions. Let's look at Walter's life, ideas, and some former patients. Born on November 4th, 1895 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Walter didn't show much interest in the medical field from a young age. It wasn't until getting his undergraduate degree from Yale University that he decided to get a medical degree from the University of Pennsylvania. Many people would say that he then became obsessed with treating mental illness. It all started when Walter became interested in a surgical procedure called leucotomy, eventually changing and editing the surgery to transform it into what is now known as a transorbital lobotomy. This made the surgery much cheaper, easier, in Walter's eyes, more successful. The process involved taking an ice pick-like instrument along the cornea and along the sclera of the eye until reaching the frontal lobe of the brain. Once penetrated, the ice pick instrument would be shaken back and forth, destroying certain neurons and neurological tracts involved with illness and behaviors. He experimented with other treatments as well, such as electroshock therapy. He traveled to the U.S. to perform these treatments in a van which was later nicknamed the Lobotomobile. A catchy and clever name for a van that brought so much horror and tragedy. Let's look at some of the realistic horrors of lobotomy and some patient testimonies. According to Kara Rogers, the author of the bibliography published by Britannica.com, out of the 3,500 lobotomies he performed or supervised, 490 of the patients died. That's almost a 15% chance of a fatality. That is not counting the numerous patients that were left in a vegetated or paralyzed state, as well as a lot of the survivors losing most of their basic cognitive thinking and returning to a childlike state of mind. This alone would make you think nobody in their right mind would want this performed to them, and many didn't. They were forced by hospitals and asylums. According to Michael Phillips, author of the Lobotomy Files on projects.wjs.com, on July 26, 1943, Freeman convinced the Veteran Affairs Chief Hines that lobotomies would help war veterans that suffered from mental illness, such as PTSD. The stamp of approval from Hines was responsible for the government handing out roughly 2,000 lobotomies. On a personal level, 24-year-old Wilma Rogers wrote Freeman a letter in 1954 which read, When are you going to perform the third transorbital lobotomy and cure me? In 1 month, 2 months, or 3 months? I must have asked you this question a dozen times, but it still remains elusive. For I am just human enough to wish to be cured of this paralyzing anxiety as soon as it is convenient for you to reoperate. Tell me when you will do it, and I will purchase a calendar and mark off every day until the time arrives. That is what prisoners in jail are reputed to do while awaiting their freedom. But in a way, I am not unlike them. For their bars are composed of steel, and my bars are composed of anxiety. However, they have one advantage over me. They know how much longer they have to serve. How much longer must I wait before the operation releases me? On the other hand, we can look at Howard Dooley's story. According to Elizabeth Day on The Guardian, an article posted on The Guardian on Sunday, January 13, 2008, the 12-year-old boy had a lobotomy because after his mother passed away, his father remarried and his stepmother found him to be too much to handle. He was a neglected child to start, and she wanted to dim down his light even more. Dewey later wrote a book about this, and it's titled My Lobotomy. With science evolving and the creation of antipsychotic drugs, the lobotomy began to fade. The lobotomy procedure became much darker in the eyes of the public when Ken Kelsey's book, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, went public. It depicted how a patient was lobotomized for being rebellious. This was later turned into a movie starring Jack Nicholson. According to Walter's son, after being ashamed of ridicule, Walter showed up to a medical conference with a box full of Christmas cards from his former patients to try to persuade doctors that his surgeries brought positive results. 5 years before his death, on May 31st, 1972, he performed 2 last lobotomies. One was considered a success, mainly because the patient didn't die. The other, Wilma Rogers, who we talked about, wrote Walter a letter, died of a brain hemorrhage from her 3rd lobotomy. The life of the lobotomy procedure had officially ended. We can all be thankful that we live in a time where medicine is evolving and becoming better every day. We don't have to worry about getting an ice pick-like instrument shoved in our brain for things such as anxiety or depression. What do you think of when you hear the name Walter Freeman? Did he bring into this world an evil that we could have done without, or did he benefit it?